Let's get to the big three.
Number 3.
As we celebrate tonight, we also think of the hundreds of thousands of Army soldiers who have made the supreme sacrifice for our nation.
Yep, President of the United States, over the weekend, the Parade for the Ages, a perfectly timed and executed Army celebration in D.C. Did you watch? What did you think? As contrast with another series of demonstrations in the streets.
Number 2.
I went all over the city in search of these Marines. And I'm sorry, but I just didn't see them. I do want to dispel the notion that the military is here. We don't want them here. They don't need to be here.
Well, we already know for a fact they needed to be there because 2 weeks ago, it was your police chief, Mayor Bass, that said they needed help and they were overwhelmed. Illegal immigration crackdown continues with new focus. Democratic cities, not hospitality, and not on the rural or on the farms, as the president praises ICE and promises to bolster their ranks, as Dems say their No King's Day was a resounding success. What do you think about that?
Number 1.
We were facing an imminent existential threat, the threat of Iran rushing to weaponize their enriched uranium to make atomic bombs with a specific and declared intent to destroy us. So we had to act.
Prime Minister Netanyahu talking about what went into Israel's decision to strike at Iran, why Israel has to finish the job, and why I worry they're not going to be able to, although they're off to a heck of a start. Lawrence Jones joins us in studio. Lawrence, I got to start with what you did, co-hosting the Parade with Emily Compagno. You did a great job. Well, I really got a perspective of our fighting force through the ages, 250 years. What was it like on the scene?
Brian, as a history guy, you know a lot of the history.
Yep.
But our kids just aren't being taught. The American public just don't. They don't teach this stuff in school. It was such a great moment. Obviously, I'm a little partial because a lot of my family served in the Army. My dad, grandfather, grandmother, uncles. I mean, it's just, my lineage is from there. But the American people, they were so excited about it because it was a celebration, not just of the Army, but of the country as well. And then you had these lunatics on the other side with other flags. I just think it made them the out of touch party.
I think it went a lot to selling the story, too.
Yeah.
Right? Because so if you're 12 years old, you're walking through the city, and then what the Army did, it set up their little mini boot camp.
That's right.
You're climbing ropes and going through concertina wire and doing things. And people are like, wow, that's pretty cool. And then to see them saluted and cheered also reaffirms it's a cool thing.
The paratroopers jumping out of the sky, landing right there, and then presenting the flag to the commander-in-chief. And then typically when you see our servicemen in uniform, they have their serious face. When they were in those tanks and they had the dogs out there and the robots out there, they were waving to the crowd, smiling. You just saw a different side. And all the talk was this was just going to be a celebration because it's the president's birthday. There were maybe 2 mentions of that throughout the entire thing, and they were very organic. Everything else was Army in America.
Yeah, so people say, well, it was costly. Yeah, it was cost between 25 and 40 million. But did you forget about the 22 foundations and companies that sponsored the Army's 250th birthday? Big, huge companies, a lot of defense firms. I wouldn't be surprised if you take the tourists that came through and people that came in, the hotels that it broke even. But you should be able to salute your own military. I also thought it was interesting to get a perspective. If you go back in our history and say, you know, what did we do with parades in the past? George Washington had a parade, reviews troops originally when he became president. Thomas Jefferson hosted parades, reviews and parades, especially to the militia. Not large scale, but they were substantial. Abraham Lincoln had parades. Truman had parades. JFK had parades in 1962. Why are they saying this is autocratic?
Brian, I don't care how much it costs. I don't care what they thought about the parade. Take it out of the recruitment budget because the numbers are already up. I guarantee you they're going to increase tenfold because it was something to be proud of. I mean, I lie to you not. I was watching the parade and watching the inspiration there, and I go, I'm 32. Could I join? Could I do the reserves? It just made you want to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself.
Right. I want you to hear the critics. And there are a lot of them, most on the left. Seth Moulton, I guess he was in the Army and Marines, and Jason Crow. Cut 28.
And watching this from a president who has occasionally praised and oftentimes denigrated the U.S. military, I'm just reminded by how out of touch this guy is.
That the army doesn't serve a politician, it serves the country. But President Trump obviously doesn't see it quite that way. He looks at the military as a function of his personal power.
The army didn't ask for this. This is not how they wanted to celebrate this event. Donald Trump asked for this.
That's not, by the way, that's not true. He did it. The Army did ask for it and asked Joe Biden. And Joe Biden said, yeah, but make it small.
It was approved already in the past administration. I'm so glad that you brought that up, Brian, because that's the real story. Trump just made it bigger as he does all things. But also, I just find it comical. The party that continues to lose with the American people telling the president of the United States, who just won, who, when you look at the polling, is dominating on many of the top issues, that he is out of touch, that we are out of touch. Meanwhile, they march through the streets, their people, with Hamas flags, other countries' flags, and they burn the American flag, and they call us out of touch.
So Thursday night, we find out that the bombing started to get rid of the nuclear program in Iran. But what they were able to do, I don't. If you put that into an episode of Homeland or into a Tom Cruise movie, I'd say, well, it's not realistic, but I'll just sit back and have fun.
Right.
The Mossad set up their own drone factory in Iran. They assassinate and lure these military leaders into one room and then kill them all. They killed 10 nuclear scientists some of them in their beds. And then they start the bombing, and they realized that they could immediately hit all 4 nuclear facilities.
And that doesn't even include all the human intelligence where they're essentially tracking all the leaders. They're there. Their guys are there on their ground. That's why they know exactly what they're doing. And I think for all the people that are criticizing this president, they tried to assassinate the president, first of all. There's been 2 attempts of that from the Iranians as well that we have intel of, as well as their proxies. The Americans have confirmed that, and Netanyahu did that in Brett Baer's interview yesterday. But our interests are there as well. They call us Big Satan. They call Israel Little Satan. And I just think the president gets it, and he's offered them a way to negotiate. All the negotiators that were negotiating originally, they're now dead. So who wants to come up, step up to the table, and offer peace as well? The president wants peace. But if you don't want it, then you're going to go.
So the easy part of the Abraham Accords was signing the documents.
That's right.
As soon as he got close, and you could say that Brett Baer had a part in that.
Right.
He
October
interviews
7th.
MBS in Saudi Arabia. Netanyahu watches the interview and says, I'll do a deal with MBS. Let's do an interview, Brett. And he does it. And they're about to sign it. And October 7th happens. And they pull off the massacre of massacres.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so horrific. Within a week, Israel was doing something they didn't want to do, go into the Gaza Strip. And next thing you know, they're doing something they didn't want to do. They go into Lebanon. And they, through the pager and through some brilliant activities, they have killed all the leadership, almost all the leadership of Hamas. They're now in their third person. It's not a Sinwar now. And then in Hezbollah, they're flat on their back. Syria flips, and Syria is no longer an enemy of Israel, leaving Iran.
Brian, I don't want to bore the audience, but to put it in a short way, Iran, although you got your Sunnis and Shias, Iran's objective has been to unite the Muslim world, the Islamic culture, to get it all together. And so when they saw peace happening, they go, we got to stop this. That's when you got October 7th. Now you got Gaza, what's happening there, and the children. Now, the leaders understand that Iran is a threat. They won't publicly say that because they don't want their people to be upset. But behind the scenes, they're telling the president, as well as the intelligence community, we don't want Iran there as well. We don't like the leaders there and all that. But they can't say that publicly because they may lose their people in the process. So I think what you're going to see is, yes, they're going to be saying, hey, let's tone down the rhetoric. Let's not have the supreme leader assassinated. But if you want peace, you got to get rid of Iran.
So the prime minister was asked by Brett, is it true that you had the Grand Ayatollah in your crosshairs and the President Trump called it off cut for?
Actually, there's so many false reports of conversations that never happened, and I'm not going to get into that. But I can tell you, I think that we do what we need to do. We'll do what we need to do. And I think the United States knows what is good for the United States, and I'm just not going to get it.
So I was struck by the fact that the prime minister is popular in Iran. Why? Because he's taking on the Grand Ayatollah, Khomeini, and they hate their government. So I know we're in through a regime change. But if everyone dies or they leave, there's going to be a regime change. That's what happened with Assad.
I would say you're first right from the extent of that the Iranian people don't like their leadership right now. They don't like what's happening. They don't like the corruption that's happening there. They don't like being oppressed. But I do think it is a little complicated because unlike other world leaders, he's a cleric. He's a religious leader. So it would be like taking out their pope. And so it's looked upon, although they don't like him, he's still this religious leader there. And so he's their God right now. He is their person that is the ruler from a religious standpoint.
Yeah.
And so I think it complicates the matter just a little bit.
I hear you, and that's pretty much what the president said.
Right.
You know what? You don't want to make him martyr. Plus, he's 85.
Yeah.
And if you really
He's sick.
if you really want to hurt him, you got to kill his son too.
Right, it's just
Because
gonna
his son's
replace
in
him.
his 40s,
Yeah, right.
and it's going to be next. It's going to change headdresses.
That's exactly right.
Right. That's about it. Listen, we'll take a time out. We'll talk a little bit more about other things that went on over the weekend, especially with the President of the United States. Now goes to the G7, where they're going to talk about this, yes, but they're also talking about possible trade deals, as well as what's going on in the Ukraine. A lot in the European Union want the president to be tougher with Putin, and there is an option that I think would be perfect for the president to take. We'll discuss when we come back with Lawrence Jones in just a moment.
Went all over the city in search of these Marines. And I'm sorry, but I just didn't see them. What the troops are doing, the federalized National Guard, is protecting the federal building. I think that detention that happened was an isolated incident, and I believe it was outside of the city of Los Angeles. But I do want to dispel the notion that the military is here. We don't want them here. They don't need to be here. Our local law enforcement have complete control of this situation.
So that is Mayor Bass saying the National Guard's making it worse, and the Marines did detain somebody. That's what she's talking about. And that was the question to her. Lawrence Jones is still here. Lawrence, there were 2 million illegals living in California. At least 7 officers were hurt over the weekend with altercations revolving around the No Kings protests. But Chief McDonald said that even though 7 officers suffered minor injuries while confronting violent protesters, they said they have things under control.
So a couple things. If they aren't there, then talk to your governor, all right? Because he's suing the president because they are there. So duke that out with him and figure out what the Democratic message is. Number 2 is the reason why they're doing the marches is because they don't want the ICE raids to happen. Now, the guys that were there in New York were serving criminal warrants of people who had not only final deportations orders signed by a judge, but they were also criminals as well. And they're saying they're going to continue to march until those stop. I'm sorry, that's just a non-starter.
I just don't. So the president came out and put something on Truth Social over the weekend, and actually on Thursday, that said he's going to have a different approach. He said, I'm going to do less with hospitality, less in rural situations, because I'm pulling people out of jobs that are going to be filled by other illegals, whatever his reasoning was. And I think he was seeing that he's getting some negativity on something he was very strong on, and that is the deportations and the immigration. But how does that mix in with his what he put on this morning, saying he's going to start amping up intensity with ICE in Democratic-led cities?
This is what I can tell you based on my sources. And then I had the opportunity to see the president last Friday. The deportations will continue. Now, there won't be some amnesty measure, but there's going to be an announcement pretty soon from the president when it comes down to the people that are here that are contributing to society, merit-based immigration. Can they have a green card? I think there'll be an announcement very soon on that. He's going to be aggressive on people that broke the law. You won't be able to become a citizen in this country. But when you look at the polling, Brian, where you see the split is the criminals, and I mean violent criminals, versus the people that first act that is criminal of breaking the law coming across the border illegally. Now, we can't have a magnet, but there is some flexibility there because you have a president that has now secured the border. So you stop the flow now. Now we got to discuss the second part is what do we do with the people that are here? Now, Brian, we also don't have enough jail space. We also don't have enough cops to do this. They're going on raids now, and that's taking 30 cops versus a normal deportation order that would take 2 cops going. So we just don't have the manpower or the space.
So just about who's organizing the protests, there's a breakdown of, they say, 198 partners listed on the official publicity material for the financial and political machine called #NoKings. 16 Democratic PACs, including Friends of Bernie Sanders, Progressive Democrats of America, and Vote Blue. with about $19.4 million in spending power. 18 Democrats aligned 501c3, including lead organizers, the American Federation of Teachers, United Auto Workers, Communication Work. Who are these people? These are political committees, 76 politically aligned political nonprofits. Really? Nonprofits have to protest in the streets. So there's going to be an investigation into these to find out who's really behind it. And are you violating your 501c3s, which is nonpartisan?
Not just that, Brian, you're paying people to go out there and protest. I mean, this is not organic at all. You got people all on TikTok and other social media platforms saying, hey, I was offered this amount of money to show up and just protest. This is crazy. This is why I don't put much stock into the protests. You're only going to anger the American public with all the flags and all this rhetoric going after our cops. We don't like it, but also it doesn't help you guys politically when it comes to building a movement because it's not organic. It's not real. Yeah,
Olivia Rodrigo is the celebrity that showed up for that. LAPD Chief McDonald now denying that she ever asked for any help. So I think it's going to be interesting to see, because if, let's say, Chicago is out of control or Seattle or Portland, does the president do the same thing he did, just go over the head of the governor and put National Guard in there? I mean, I feel bad for the National Guard. They're going to be in the middle of it, but that's got to be the warning shot. I'm going to do the same thing I do with Gavin Newsom. That's why you got to make sure to win that case.
Well, you have to do it, Brian. I mean, I remember 2020, the American public, we weren't happy with our cities burning. Yep. So at some extent, I think the president, you mentioned this earlier on Fox, learned from that situation and said, hey, I'm just going to step in.
The immigration situation, he's now, when it comes to deportation, at 42% approval. On the border, he's 52%. So both should be higher. Do you think that bothers him?
I think it bothers him because there's a lot of misinformation that's out there. I think in large part, the deportation has focused on the criminals. But you get these one-off cases, and they become national news. But remember, we predicted this. I said after he got elected for the second time, watch the American public, because they're going to change. When they start posting sob stories, it was going to change their sentiment of the American people.
Yeah, and we'll see. I mean, get the 660,000 criminals. That's a pretty good story to tell. Got to go. Lawrence, thanks so much.
Thanks,
you got to go. Speaking of, you got to go. Lawrence Jones. Hey, coming up next, we go out to Jerusalem and talk to the editor-in-chief of the Jerusalem Post. Don't move. Brian Kilmeade Show. And Eli Lake is all over it, columnist for the Free Press, knows as much about the Middle East as anyone you'll speak to, contributing editor at Commentary. Eli, welcome.
Great to be here, Brian.
I mean, I'm
wearing my Clash T-shirt because the Casbah has been rocked.
Yes, that's interesting. I didn't know there was a theme to it, but I like it. It's pretty amazing. I mean, we got the video of what's happening in Israel because we have great sources, we've got bureaus there. But
unbelievable, yeah.
We're getting a different perspective on Iran's taking most of the hits. They're the ones, the gas and the gas fields and the oil fields and the nuclear scientists and the command leadership. 4 different nuclear sites have been hit. The whole, any type of missile defense has been destroyed. 1/3 of their missile launchers have been rocked. What do you think's going on in Iran right now?
I think what we're seeing is a series of airstrikes combined with on-the-ground Mossad special operations that are designed to decapitate the security military side of the regime. So there was a decision, and the Israeli National Security Advisor said over the weekend that they were not attacking what he called political targets. That means Supreme Leader Ali Khamenei, that means the president. But everything that keeps that dictatorship in power, meaning MOIS, IRGC, the Revolutionary Guard Corps, the traditional military, the Quds Force, all of these arms of the Iranian state that allow the dictatorship to survive because they're hated by their people, are being decapitated one by one. Israel has Iran wired for sound. This is, I think, one of the most extraordinary military operations that have really, in modern history, it's hard to imagine. You'd have to go back to antiquity, I guess, to sort of think of something this effective and this extraordinarily efficient and targeted. I mean, the ballistic missiles are landing at random in Tel Aviv, killing civilians. Israel's target list is like, various generals and people in charge of these military programs. It's amazing.
I mean, look, the head of the Quds Force, Mohammed Kazemi, the head of Intel, dead. His deputy, Hassan Mohawk, I think you say his name, deputy, killed. Good luck with it. So good luck. Talk to your Ted Dent nuclear scientist, as well as 9 commanders. Now, what do you?
By the way, I heard from another Israeli journalist named Amit Siegel, who was on a podcast. He said that Israel had phone calls to the top air defense commanders and Air Force commanders before the operation, telling them to come to an emergency meeting. These are the people who would give the order to launch the retaliatory strikes, to meet in one location, which the Israelis knew, and blew all of them up. Think about that.
So wait, the phone call came in to dupe them to a meeting.
Yeah, like emergency meeting, show up here. Like you get the text. They show up, the Israelis had spoofed the text, and then they are all there, and then they blow that up. That was on the first night. That's like science fiction. It's James Bond. It's incredible.
So what do you think of this Wall Street Journal report? The headline is, "A battered Iran signals it wants to de-escalate hostilities with Israel." They say they're urgently signaling that it seeks an end to the hostilities. And they say that the U.S. can broker any talks as long as they don't take part in the attacks. They've run defensive operations in the attacks. The F-35s and different things from the aircraft carriers, at least one aircraft carrier has definitely helped out. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, I had that detail in my file today. That went up last night. This is the Iranian Foreign Minister, Araghchi. What he's doing is he's going around the European foreign ministries and Gulf foreign ministries and conveying this message. The $1 million question, is he speaking for himself or is he speaking for the supreme leader? And it's unclear whether this is the chief diplomat trying to do some diplomacy or whether he really is representing, sort of the strategic decision of the regime. If that's the case, then they're basically going to have to trade their entire nuclear program for the survival of the regime. But I'm not entirely sure that that's a realistic option. And even if they did that, this is such a humiliation to Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. It's unclear to me whether he would last 6 months after such a deal, because he would have to worry about his own, surviving hardliners. And then always keep in mind the Iranian people, they're furious. They loathe this regime. And will he have the ability to get his thugs to use violence against demonstrations? That's the big question. I'm not so sure that that's going to be the case, but we'll have to see.
Do they ever sit around and go, what the hell did we do October 7th? You had that day of glory and horrific killing. And then October 8th, Hezbollah joins the fray. And since that time, Hamas and Hezbollah almost have death blows. And now Iran has lost their so much in terms of their aura. Now the people of Iran are saying, where's all of the money? Why do we give money to Hezbollah and Hamas? We have no missile defense. We got really no army, no air force.
The Iranian people know. They've been saying it for years. The only thing that's been keeping Khamenei in power has been the willingness to use unthinkable brutality against his own population. That's the thing to watch. If you're the 35-year-old Basiji force commander and you're ordered to fire live bullets on a demonstration, are you going to follow the order at this point? Given everything you know, given that the 3 commanders ahead of you have been picked off by the Israelis, are you going to do that if there are mass demonstrations?
Yeah, I mean, you might have a choice. And this is why the prime minister said this, cut 8.
But to the people of Iran, I say you're great people. You're people of great talent and genius. You have been usurped by this tyranny that has robbed you of hope, has robbed you of a good life. You know, I speak to the Iranian people directly. I don't know if you know this, Brett. I do these videos. I get millions and millions of responses. And they say, Viva Israel, bravo Israel, free us from this tyranny. And I say to them, your hour of freedom is near. Rise up, be free.
What about that tactic?
I love it. I love it.
Turns out he's popular in Israel.
I wrote about this
in Iran.
Yeah, I wrote about this like 8 years ago when he started doing this kind of thing, I noticed it. And I'm working on a piece which I don't want to get into details because I'm still trying to report it out. But let's just say the Israelis have capabilities inside of Iran to support demonstrations and to support the opposition. The opposition in Iran is not organized. There isn't really a key leader. You could argue maybe the son of the Shah, Reza Pahlavi, is somebody who people have rallied around. He is more popular in Iran than I think most people would realize. But there is a real opportunity here, and I think the strategic opportunity is that, yes, I understand the argument. After, the government falls in Afghanistan, the Taliban come in. There's a devil we don't know, maybe worse than the devil we know, but this is a very bad devil, the Iranian regime. And the Iranians have a history of a constitutional system. They have a history of a democracy in some ways in the 20th century. It's not crazy to think that there can be something better. And I think that, there is a role for America to play, not to rebuild, not to nation build. That's not for the United States at this point. We don't do that. But I think there is a role to play leading the world to try to bring support for something of a democratic transition.
Anyway, let's play this out.
Yeah.
So we know that they were transporting the Shahed drones to Russia. It really changed the face of the war after Russia realized they had a terrible ground game. That's got to stop. Oil and gas has just been destroyed or really crippled. That's going to hurt China, right? So Syria.
Okay, we should say there's a lot more oil and gas that they can destroy. I think that I'm not saying that it wasn't significant, but it's not like they've brought all the Iranian oil off market, which would really cause an oil shock.
They've been disrupted? I guess $73.
They've been disruptions, but they could do more.
Okay. How about this? So Iran's got to go. China's got to say, wait a second. Okay, I got my money. I got some oil. Maybe I can't count on that. And then you have, of course, the transportation. The Houthi rebels are not getting rearmed by Russia or anybody else because Syria stopped that. Syria says you're not allowed in. And they're kicking Russia out of Syria wholeheartedly. So Russia, it loses an ally of Iran, in Iran, let's say at least temporarily. Now, Russia maybe benefits a little bit from more oil and gas, but now they're trying to, then you have Turkey and Russia, the only ones really calling for an end to the violence. I don't see many other states in the Gulf states doing much to demand an end to the violence. I don't see anybody rallying to Iran's side. Do you?
No, we're seeing kind of perfunctory remarks from the Arab foreign ministries, but I have no reason to believe their leaders actually believe it. I was surprised by a very strong supportive statement from Emmanuel Macron, who has been extremely critical of Israel's war in Gaza. Everybody knows Iran has been an utter menace to international security. This is an opportunity to finally take care of that problem. What I don't understand is the wing of the president, the MAGA coalition, that seems to think this is, it hasn't been World War III. And the idea that this is just like, the worst thing in the world and that this is going to be their number one issue is, it's kind of crazy to me that would be it.
I worry about guys like Elbridge Colby in the administration as undersecretary. He's evidently, he turned down a request from General Kurilla to get more defensive weapons.
Yeah, that's not an ideological thing, though. That was also in my story today. That reflected the fact that there really is a low supply of these interceptors because we give them to Ukraine, we give them to Israel. We need those in our arsenal to deter bad guys ourselves, particularly in the Pacific. So that's just a reflection of something that Trump is trying to handle right now, which is to rebuild our defense industrial base because it's been devastated over neglect for the last 20, 25 years. And that's a huge priority for the Pentagon. So, I have my differences with Elbridge Colby. He would be considered a restrainer. I'm not. And but in fairness to him, I don't think that's him freelancing. I think that is a reflection of the scarcity of the interceptors needed for these air defense systems.
So who are people that are against any type of measure, us playing a role there and are mad at Israel?
It's Tucker Carlson from the outside. I'd say Tulsi Gabbard is somebody who has kind of made her views. She testified that U.S. intelligence said that Iran wasn't trying to build a weapon. I don't think that. I think there's a lot of U.S. intelligence that would suggest they are, and certainly the Israelis don't have that. I think some people say that's around J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance himself is a little bit more of an interesting figure here because he's been really, really supportive as a senator of Israel. He doesn't look at Israel the same way he looks at Ukraine, but certainly the people around Vance would be in that category. And there were people who were recently fired below Mike Waltz, who was fired at the National Security Council, and that was sort of seen as a power move for this restrainer wing. And you can find other elements like that. On the other hand, Rubio, Hegseth, I mean, these are people who I think would be much more in the traditional Republican kind of position, which is that, we're not seeking nation building wars. We're not trying to launch wars for fuzzy ideas of human rights, but America should be a force for good in the world, and it is. And I think that's how they look at it.
Yeah, I think so too. I also think, you worry about the Steve Bannon wing of the party too. I don't know where you put
Bannon's
him on
an interesting figure. I mean, his first response has been Israel's doing it. They should be on their own, go with God. But Bannon also, was very supportive of Trump getting out of the original Obama-Iran agreement. I think that Bannon's very close with the evangelicals. The evangelicals are very supportive of Israel. I'm not sure I would put Bannon in the same category as Tucker Carlson. I do think that there is a kind of new constituency of kind of new Republicans who are represented maybe in the kind of podcasting world, and they may have been Democrats 15 years ago, but now they're not because of where the Democrats have gone. There's a lot of opposition to this war there. So we'll see how it plays out politically, but I would just point out, so far, Israel is looks like the Michael Jordan of 21st century war. They're going 6-0 in the finals. And I'm looking at this and I'm saying nothing succeeds like success. So anyone who thinks that Israel is vulnerable because of October 7th has not been studying what they've been doing since. Donald Trump, in answer to the MAGA world, he says he wasn't familiar with Carlson's critique, but contended that as a pioneer of the modern America First movement, he's the final arbiter, which means to put the America U.S. first. We're considering that I'm the one that developed it, and considering that the term wasn't used until I came along, I think I'm the one that decides that. So he got a little angry at that. Yeah. I mean, I don't think Donald Trump necessarily wants to alienate Tucker Carlson. He has a huge audience. He's certainly aligned with the Trump agenda on a number of things, but it's Tucker who decided to make this the sine qua non issue. So it's, we can agree on 8 out of 10 things, Brian, right? But if the only thing I want to talk about is the one thing you and I don't agree on, and then the narrative that Tucker is retelling to his audience is that Trump is a chump, that Trump has been manipulated by warmongers and elites and the pro-Israel lobby and Netanyahu. And that is not who Trump is. Trump decides. And by the way, Trump does not sound like Netanyahu. He had a Truth Social over the weekend saying, I want this war to stop. Okay. I think his vision of how it stops is a little different than Tucker's, but you know what I'm saying? There's something insulting about the way that Tucker is framing the issue, as if Trump is not smart enough to make his own decisions. Which is crazy. Eli Lake, thanks so much. Check out his podcast too, and his columns on the Free Press. Meanwhile, the President of the United States at the G7 summit, he's just gotten there. The number one story of, obviously, is the Israeli-Iran conflict. Let's bring in Dr. Qanta Ahmed. She's Senior Fellow of Independent Women's Forum, member of the Council on Foreign Relations. Dr. Ahmed, welcome back. Your thoughts about what Israel's pulled off so far?
Just extraordinary. 72 hours. Israel has secured total dominance over the airspace from Western Iran to Tehran. That's an area of denial. Right now, Israel is bombing during the daytime, I am informed, taking out their national television. Last night, they took out the massive fuel storage capabilities. So now Iranians are lining for fuel with a limit of about 15 liters, a few gallons per family. And I think they are closing in. Obviously, the first few hours, they neutralized major uranium enrichment sites. And all of this done with extraordinary precision, targeting and taking out Iran's capabilities of launching missiles, which Iran is still doing. I've been here several days. Each night we have multiple alarms. We have to go to the bomb shelter. Unfortunately, there have been 24 Israelis killed, 595 wounded, the vast majority lightly wounded. So it's taking a toll. And of the almost 400 ballistic missiles that Iran has launched, less than 10% have penetrated.
Which is pretty amazing. So they said they expect as high as 15%, according to the ambassador, but you have it even lower. So I'll tell you what, it does say everything about Iran. They are going for civilians, and what the Israelis are doing with high sophistication are going for the military. They're going for nuclear scientists.
Very important distinction, Brian. Thank you.
And that's just it. It's like, what's the target? So where the Wall Street Journal says that the foreign minister is approaching intermediaries and saying they're looking to get talks going again. Dr. Ahmed, I hope this doesn't sound bad. I have no interest, if I'm the U.S. or Israel, in talks. Are you kidding me? So we go back to letting them on their word not enrich, or thinking about not enriching and spinning centrifuges, or might not spin them. As soon as they get some money, as soon as they rebuild the oil and gas programs, which I think Israel's doing a job on right now, they're going to start fueling Hezbollah and Hamas. And we're going to be back at square one again.
I couldn't agree more. And I think Israel is speaking loudly. This country, Iran, has had almost a decade of these types of negotiations. And we know, and I believe this is what lit the fuse, is that Iran was preparing to receive precursors via Hong Kong to replenish over 800 ballistic missiles. And so I think that is the reason why Prime Minister Netanyahu knew that they are approaching or at nuclear threshold. And we know from Brett Byers' conversation with the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman that a nuclear Iran means a nuclear Saudi Arabia and the region. And let me just remind you, we just went through 10 days ago the conflict with India and Pakistan. And you can see how the game changes when there are two nuclear players putting everything at stake. So, yes, I think Israel has spoken. There is no room for negotiation. And I do believe this is the end of the Islamist regime. That is going to be the end result.
I know when these oppressive societies happen, you really don't know what they're made of and how strong they are. We saw that with Saddam Hussein and others. But looking right now, I mean, they just killed 4 heads of the Quds Force, the people, the 9 commanders that were blown up the first day. The Ayatollah could have been killed had Donald Trump told the prime minister not to do it. You wonder what is keeping this group up?
So some of it may be that they've drunk their own Kool-Aid and they believe that they are invincible. And I think Iran is really discovering its own capacity is more of a paper tiger. You mentioned it. They relied on their proxies, whether it's Hamas that has conducted an excoriating campaign, tormenting and torturing and sacrificing its own population, as well as devastating Israelis on October 7th and after that. And even more so, Hezbollah. But right at the start, in the first 24 hours, the remnants of Hezbollah in Lebanon had said, hey, when we're out of this, we are not defending Iran because they have been appropriately chastised and they're looking at their end days. So now you're finding an Iran that really hasn't been battle tested since the 1980s war between Iran and Iraq, which Iraq won. So I think that they are probably slow to realize this is the end. My guess is many of the Ayatollahs and the leading clerics will flee to the same place that Bashar Assad is. They'll get asylum. And now we have to see. I'm glad that you mentioned Iraq. My sources in Iraq are very worried about what will happen to Iran when this regime collapses. They are fearful that there could be some anarchy. There isn't a clear leading opposition in Iran. It's a vibrant democracy. And I also think that the United States, even though it's been providing intelligence and a lot of moral support and logistical support, the United States is an extraordinary deterrent. I was expecting Iran to also strike on U.S. assets in Erbil and U.S. special forces there, but nothing of that nature has occurred because Iran fears the United States.
Iraq, I'm not saying it would have been easy, and I know we made mistakes in Iraq. Saddam Hussein to be taken out, we can debate that. I think he had to be done. we can't just look in 2024 and 2025 and say, well, we shouldn't have done that. Well, put yourself back there. This was the menace of the Middle East. And yes, he was opposition to Iran. But when Saddam Hussein gone, Iran created so much unrest, killed so many soldiers directly and indirectly, and really funded the militias and the unruly behavior of post-Saddam Iraq. Things would have been a lot different had Iran not put their hands on the till in there, and much more than they were doing with Syria. And now they have huge influence in Iraq. We don't love that, and the Iraqis have their own pride. Even the Shias don't love the Iranians and the Persians. So, but they had to because they had the power and the money. But now think about how things would change in Iraq if Iran had a different leadership.
I'm so glad you said that. And Brian, there's probably no one on air who has the kind of depth of foreign policy as you do at the moment. And given our almost 10 years of us talking about extremism, beginning with Charlie Hebdo, if you remember. Exactly. That's where I really learned about the menace of Iran in the region, is visiting Iraq and speaking to particularly our Kurdish friends. The way that Iran has subjugated Iraq, the way its militia are still operating freely, the Hashd al-Shabi, who interestingly, as Israel has launched these operations, my sources tell me, have left their posts. I'm waiting for them to give up their uniforms. They are absolutely terrified of U.S. consequences. So I believe Israel has actually redrawn the map of the Middle East already. This is why Syria is now entering into the international community. This is why Assad has left. This is from Israeli actions. This is why Lebanon has a chance, because Hezbollah took on Israel. Big mistake. Lebanon is now liberated. And I believe the same outcome could happen for Iraq and Iran. My hope is President Trump will see that his legacy truly could be helping dismantle the nuclear weapon capabilities of Iran, and now gifting the world a flourishing Middle East because of the heavy lifting Israel has done.
Yes, there's two moves Iran has left, I think. Decide to attack U.S. forces and shut off the Strait of Hormuz. I can't see either one being a rational right next move, but this has never been a rational regime.
So you're correct. First of all, again, sources close to the Kurdish regional government tell me that there seems to be, even though it's a strategic possibility, there seem no signs of Iran retaliating on either Kurdish territory or federal Iraq territory. I know that we have the most important asset there in terms of the American consulate in the American consulate in Erbil, which is our biggest consulate. Yes, that's a nice target. About the Straits of Hormuz, that's pretty intelligent as well that you said. Yes, they might threaten that. And yes, their Khaybar Island is actually right there at the north end of the Persian Gulf. But Iran doesn't really have capability to strangle that Strait of Hormuz. That will be absolutely vigorously defended. Yeah. And any oil that they're exporting, which I believe Israel will kill their oil export capability, the market has already absorbed that. So I think we are not going to see them strangle the oil routes to have any significant effect. I think this is the end game for Iran, and they are under a lot of pressure. That pressure will intensify tonight.
Eli Lake was on with us a short time ago and said, when it comes to regime change, America doesn't want any part of it, and we shouldn't. But listen to what he said we should worry about, perhaps.
Let's just say the Israelis have capabilities inside of Iran to support demonstrations, and to support the opposition. The opposition in Iran is not organized. There isn't really a key leader. You could argue maybe the son of the Shah, Reza Pahlavi, is somebody who people have rallied around. He is more popular in Iran than I think most people would realize. But there is a real opportunity here. And I think the strategic opportunity is that, yes, I understand the argument. After, the government falls in Afghanistan, the Taliban come in. There's the devil we don't know, maybe worse than the devil we know, but this is a very bad devil, the Iranian regime. And the Iranians have a history of a constitutional system. They have a history of a democracy in some ways in the 20th century. It's not crazy to think that there can be something better. And I think that, there is a role for America to play, not to rebuild, not to nation build. It's not for the United States at this point. We don't do that. But I think there is a role to play leading the world to try to bring support for something of a democratic transition.
So it's a pretty bad devil, is what I want. This current one is a pretty bad devil.
So I think Eli has hit it right on the head. However, I would emphasize the Iranian people, 90 million people, they are amongst the most educated in the region. Remember, they are Persians. They have a civilization 5,000 years. They have had a diverse ethnic and a diverse religious background. Their women are some of the most educated in the region. They have tremendous passion of their nation. I think given this opportunity, though I do not believe that Israel conducted these operations for regime change, this is about the survival of the state of Israel and the prevention of a genocidal assault that the Iranian leaders have still been announcing since this conflict. But I do agree, if we can facilitate the Iranians for taking the reins, I think that would be very good for humanity.
Dr. Ahmed, thanks so much. Stay safe in Israel.
Brian, it's great to see you again. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, historic times, and you're getting a firsthand view. All right, Brian Kilmeade Show. We'll be back in just a moment. The President of the United States at the G7 just made remarks. Yeah, it's not a good time, he said, to have Putin come into the G7, make it a G8. But he said they never should have been kicked out by Barack Obama earlier. So more statements. They should not be brokering peace in Iran. I can tell you that for sure. I just have no credibility. Plus, with Israel, you know what Israel found with Hezbollah when they started going through those tunnels? Russian weapons. Same thing with Hamas. So Russia's all over this, and they're not a friend of Israel's.